Figuring out what to paint is always a big deal. And when you find a photo that you absolutely love, but then you don't know how to paint it, that's frustrating. In this video, we're going to go over 5 steps to help you to figure out how to paint whatever it is you've chosen to paint. The first question I ask is, do I need to change the composition? So let's look at the picture I've chosen and see if we can figure out some things. In this one, it was oriented like this. And so I decided that this was distracting and that I didn't like that tip. And so I just changed it like this. The second thing I noticed was that the glow behind the morning glory was so white that it just drew attention to itself. And so I wanted to diminish the whiteness of that glow a little bit. I also wanted this flower to be on, and so I moved it over to here. The second question, how am I going to paint each part and at least figure out the very hardest part? This part, I decided that I'll use bouquet, but I don't want a big white blob. I want a lighter area there, but not so white that it detracts from this flower. Painting bouquet tends to be wet, and how do I paint that without spoiling this front part? So I decided I'm going to mask it. And for those of you that are interested, I'm going to put how I did the masking at the very end of the video. So question number 3 is, do the colors work in this picture? And I think that they mostly do. I don't like this gray. I'm going to make it a little bit browner. And I don't like the texture. I'm going to make it look like wood. I think it's distracting. And then I think that it would be beneficial to have a few, like here's some blues and purples here, but to have a few greens to tie this in with up here. But I don't want to lose this soft morning look either. So I will have the tans and browns in there. The fourth question is, what tricks and techniques? Well, this is a trick and a technique. I included that under how am I going to paint each part, but using tape is a trick. I'm going to be using some tools. When I put bouquet, I'll be using these tools, stencils and a stencil, round stencils. These are the brushes that I used for this video, and I also used bleed-proof white. You can find everything that I used for this video in the description. The other techniques that I'm going to use is wet on wet for this background, and then I'm going to use wet on dry for this foreground. And then the last question is, should I practice some of this ahead of time? Now, this wet on dry part I have no desire to practice because it is what I paint all the time. And I make mistakes, but I know I can fix them. But since I'm changing the colors here, I might consider practicing it with some of those other colors in to see what it looks like just on a small piece of paper. Now, I'm probably not going to because I'm making a video and it needs to not take forever, but that is something you could do that would help you. You could even do some techniques like use glass. I have a whole video about using glass for editing. If you're interested in learning about how to use glass, I'll put my other video into the description. So let's begin. I'm going to start with the background. To do the background, I wet the page lightly and then began dropping in color. When I got to the end of my recording, I had a revelation. There is a question number 6 that I should have been asking all this time and answering. And so I have included that at the very end of the video. Well, this background didn't get quite as smooth as I had really wanted it to, and so I'm going to do another wash. I'm going to go on and start doing my bouquet. Where it's going to be white is where I'm going to start with clean water on my stencil, and then I push it down into my sponge so it's not dripping. Have a tissue handy. And I'm going to make these rather large. I always make bouquet different sizes and overlapping It just adds a lot of charm, makes them look more like they do in nature when they when they shine through the trees a little bit. Okay, I think that's probably enough bouquet, but when I'm all done, I'll make a final judgment on that. Now, before you take the tape off, you do need to make sure that you have your paper completely dry. And so it's a good idea to get your tape out again. But before I do that, I also want to put this railing in. The first time I demoed this in the video, I was just taping off a little thing, maybe it was a star, and I didn't press it down with my nail tight enough, and it's ran under it, and the star ended up looking kind of cool, but it did not exactly make my point. The rest of this painting is wet on dry, and it's a little bit more careful type of painting. I always start in an out-of-the-way place. It just makes me get used to what I'm painting in this subject and gives me a feel for what I'm doing. So I'm going to start with this back leaf, and it's a very dark green back there. This is one of my favorite tools, these little squares that are homemade. And it helps to get your values right, but it also helps to isolate color. And look how blue that is. It's sort of a blue-gray with just a hint of green. Now, I'm not going to put as much detail into these leaves as is in the photo because they're over at the side and they aren't the main subject. And so I don't want to spend a lot of time painting over here. Now, before I go any further, I want to get these lights in here. And so I'm going to get some very watered down pink. I'm mixing some magenta with some quinacridone rose. And if you can see that in the video, it's obviously way too dark. So we're going to get a really watered down version. And then we need some with some grays in it too. So we'll get some of that out there. There's not a lot of color in this. Just getting the basic pink down for this flower, and then I'll add the details and the brighter pinks later. It's hard to get these really bright purples, partly because the paper is off-white. So for these leaves right here, I'm just putting in the detail in dark and letting it dry and just going over it with the lights. Get some of the detail into this flower. I do want this flower to stay light in spite of that because it's the most backlit of them all. Now I'm going to get some bleed proof white out and put it on my palette. And then you can water it down, or you can, if you want to, you can mix some colors into it. And I'm going to get some of this backlit look. Now this I often do on things that I want really light, really whitish looking, because the paper's ivory. And so then I want the it to look whiter, like the bleed-proof white, and so I often go back and just add some bleed-proof white on top. I especially find this true when I'm doing pinks or snow or waterfalls, where you really want the white to be white to soften these other areas of white. Now, if you do it as you go, it softens a little bit easier. I'm just running a wet brush over most of these now up here. I'm switching to purple, so I have cleaned the green off of my brush. So now I'm going to step away from it and see what I'm missing. I'm going to put it in my windowsill and get it where I can look at it from a distance and really separate myself from what I've done. I'm noticing one thing right away, and I am going to do it while I'm noticing it. I don't like this sharp line right here. Even though it's bouquet, which this picture has bouquet in it, but they're very soft. Goodness, I can't pick that thing up. There we go. So I'm going to just put one right here, maybe a little bit bigger, and soften all those parts that were coming together right there. And maybe just soften a little bit of the other edges too. I've been looking at this for a couple days and I'm ready to do the final tweaking. The first thing that I have noticed is that this stands out more than this does, and it's because the background got so much darker. And so I'm going to lighten it. I'm going to take some bleed-proof white and use my stencils and do more bouquet right over top of everything. It's just some watered down white in here. And I don't want to lift quite that much off. I kind of liked how white that was. So, and yes, I will have to go back and do some fixing on the things that are in the foreground. Okay, I'm satisfied with those, and now I'm just going to go in with my skinny brushes and redo some of the stuff that I had to undo. Question number 6. What does this photo look like from a distance? Before I even paint it, I need to know what it looks like from a distance. Is it even worth painting, or is it something that as soon as it's a little bit far away is going to lose its charm? And that's a little bit what happened to me. When I looked at these two from across the room, I realized that this photo wasn't that strong in the flow that I wanted to happen from here to here. Now, I was able to do that. However, if I had looked at that from the very beginning, I would have done it better and I would have known the direction I was taking. And so I do recommend that, and I plan to do that from here on out. If you would like to buy a cup of coffee to help keep the Watercolor Classroom channel going, that would be great. Likes and subscribes and comments are also very much appreciated. To do the masking, first I put tape down and then I cut around it. Now, when you cut around it, you only cut around the outside. So I don't need to put that railing in. So I'm only going to cut around the outside. I'm not going to cut around the outside of each object, but the outside of each area. In here, there's, not too much to cut out. You just go around. So I'm going to start here, and you have to I have to turn my paper a lot because I can't make it maneuver without doing that. It helps to actually look at your photo a little bit, because sometimes you're drawing, you just go, what on earth is that? Whenever you come to one of these places where the tape's a little bit doubled, you almost always have to go over it twice. Once it's all cut, you use your fingernail, or you can use the back of a spoon, and make sure that you have it rubbed down really well. And then you begin to lift. And you keep your knife handy, because sometimes you don't have a perfect cut. Anytime you come to a corner, it can get a little tricky. Now, if you've never done this before, I recommend you start with a more straightforward flower without all of these twists and turns. Now I think I have all of it cut away, and now I'm going to go over all of the edges again with my fingernail or with a spoon so that no paint leaks underneath of this.